C2 Lawson. Hello again. C2 Lawson says, at 46 years old, I'm learning to be a machinist, running multiple CNC mills and learning CAD/CAM software. I keep waiting for someone to tap me on the shoulder and tell me to get out and that I don't belong here, especially on days when I make a mistake or run apart. Have you had days like that? Constantly, always. Always. For my whole life, I've had days like that. Less in the past few years, much less in the past few years. I think that's a function of age. Something happened over COVID, frankly. And I'm still sort of parsing what it was. But for me, that feeling of being an imposter, well, it still happens from time to time. It went away in a professional capacity. Like, I go to conferences full of high achievers of all sorts of different stripes. And for the longest time, I felt exactly that way, that someone was gonna, you don't belong here. You don't belong with these people. You gotta go. These are serious people. You are not a serious person. I have come to understand that I am a serious person. I have come to feel in the making of things that I am part of a grand continuum, as we all are, in all of the aspects that we exhibit our expertise. You know, some at an incredibly high level, some at a medium level, some at a low level. I'm never going to be the 14-hour-a-day for months on end Bruce Springsteen making the perfect album kind of creator. I'm unwilling to subserve my life to my efforts to that degree. But I've come to understand what I have to contribute. So the real trick is to recognize that feeling that someone's going to come up and tap you on the shoulder, it's part of the process. When it happens, when it comes up, just recognize that it's part of the process. It's like, I'm sure there are other emotional responses you have to stuff that are irrational, right? There's a sound that makes you like, "Argh!" That makes you emotionally crazy. But it's not like you're going to go take that emotion out, or, you know, I'm sure we have all learned how to not take our temporal emotions out under certain circumstances on the people around us. It's a lifelong journey. But that feeling, I learned that it would happen about 70% of the way into every build. And frankly, there are still times here in the shop when I'm like, I don't know why I pretend to say that I make things. I'm an idiot. No one's harder on our own brains than we are. I know that I'm not an idiot. I do wish sometimes this thing worked a little faster. I've met people for whom this works faster, and I'd love to be one of them. I think I know. I think I'm pretty clear about exactly how smart I am. Seller Pictures. Can you talk about the influence? Sorry, Seller Pictures is the user. Can you talk about the influence of your shop environment on your mindset and work? Many shops are pretty sterile, all work affairs, but the cave is the opposite. On purpose? Yeah, it's totally on purpose. The cacophony in here is part of what I need under ideal circumstances to feel creatively fertile. 100%. I call this style of decoration visual cacophony. We're at 49% on my dry box, 12% in 40 minutes. We'll see how it goes. I've also worked in, I mean, you know, when I worked on Savage Builds and I worked on Mythbusters Jr., both of those were in shops that weren't mine with vastly different design schemes. I mean, I've spent a decade and a half in Jamie's, 2 decades working in Jamie's shop. Well, Jamie's shop is actually also not, he likes a certain amount of visual cacophony too. I don't have an issue with sterile all workshops. I mean, actually, years ago, I visited Wet. I think Mark Fuller is the proprietor of Wet. Those are the guys that made the Bellagio fountain, and they're amazing. They're the designers of the water weenies that are like the laminar water flows that leap through the air at Disney World and other theme parks. And Wet had built a shop for its employees, which is one of the loveliest things I have ever seen. It was like big white rooms with walls of tools and every tool outlined on the wall. Woodworking tools, measuring tools, clamps, saws. Oh, absolutely gorgeous. And I mean, this was a shop in which someone had spent so much time and money making like the platonic ideal of a usable shop that it itself engendered cleaning up, because if one thing was missing, you could see it from the door. Like, it was a real philosophy. I don't know how that shop is today. It might be a total shit fight, or it might still be that awesome. But I loved that idea. And every time I visit makerspaces, I often feel like they're a little too antiseptic. And so I often recommend to makerspaces, hang some failures on the wall. There's nothing I like better. There's nothing I think belongs more on the wall of a makerspace than a line of objects that makes it clear that it was failure, 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 less failure, success. I want to see the line of succession of disasters. The spaghetti prints, that piece of wood that table saw got angry at and threw across the room. Because I think those failures, they operate to me like hugs. They say, this is going to happen here. It's not a perfect process, and it's not always going to go according to plan. I think that walking into a new makerspace could be very intimidating. It's a community. You don't know that community. You don't know what they might think of you and your work. And that can be fraught. That can cause you to be inhibited in some of your creative output. And frankly, I feel like if there's a bunch of broken or iterations that aren't successful on the walls, it tells new visitors that this is a place for iteration, not just for making a perfect prototype. Yeah. Years ago, I realized that every single shop is the externalization of a philosophy about how to work. Now, the visual aspect of my shop helps me work by making my creative juices flow. I like the visual cacophony. The other aspect of this shop, that it is an externalization of my philosophy of work, is that I want the lowest possible threshold to my flow state. And that means I want everything at arm's reach. That's why I've got a blow dryer and a Dremel here under the workbench. It's why my hot glue gun sits here too. It's why calipers are right there, and I have multiple sets of key-handled Bondhus Allen wrenches. That the less I have to move to get the next thing that I need, the more into the problem solving I am. And there's nothing that makes me crazier than like being out of the one tool I need on a Sunday afternoon when all the stores are closed. And so I seek to build a shop in which that never happens. Ultimately, I end up treating this shop sort of like a hardware store. And that when things are flush, when I've, making good dough, I will invest in more stuff to make this place feel even more like a hardware store. And when things are not flush, I just enjoy it as it is. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us even further, you can by becoming a tested member. Details are, of course, below, but it includes all sorts of perks, and we're building them all the time. You get advanced word and behind-the-scenes photos of some of our projects. Questions, you get to ask direct questions during my live streams, and we have some members-only videos, including the Adam real-time series of unbroken, unedited shots of me working here in the shop. They are weirdly meditative. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the next one.